Sometimes life doesn't need a big change. It just needs a small shift. One tiny habit, one small decision, and suddenly your entire direction changes. Because the truth is, your life doesn't change when the year changes. It changes when your habits do. And I learned this not in a month, not in a year, but in 1 week. Just 7 days, 3 habits, and my life began to feel different. And today, I want to share those 3 habits with you. The ones that didn't just change my schedule, they changed my soul. I remember the first morning I decided to change. It wasn't special. The sky didn't look different. My alarm still rang. My bed still felt warm and my mind still whispered, just 5 more minutes. But that day, something inside me refused to press snooze because I realized every time I delay my morning, I delay my destiny. So I sat up, stretched, and did something I hadn't done in a long time. I didn't reach for my phone. I didn't check my messages. I didn't open social media. I just sat there quietly. No noise, no rush, no notifications. Just me breathing. And for the first time, I felt how loud my mind had become. Thoughts, worries, plans, expectations, all shouting at once. It was like living inside a crowd. You see, most of us wake up into chaos. Before our feet even touch the ground, we are already reacting to texts, to news, to other people's lives. And then we wonder why our minds feel exhausted before the day even begins. That's when it hit me. I don't need to appease to my life. I just need to remove noise. So that morning, I decided to sit in silence for 10 minutes. 10 minutes that felt like eternity at first. My mind fought it. It said, "This is a waste of time, you have things to do." But I stayed. I breathed in, breathed out, and slowly something beautiful happened. The thoughts didn't disappear, but they started to slow down. My heartbeat matched my breath, and in that stillness, I could finally hear something I hadn't heard in a long time myself. In those quiet moments, I realized how disconnected I had become. I was connected to the world, but not to me. I was always responding, always reacting, but never reflecting. And I understood silence is not the absence of sound, it's the presence of clarity. The next morning I did it again, same 10 minutes, but this time I looked outside the window. The light, the air, the life. And it felt like the word was saying, if welcome back. I started to notice how peace wasn't somewhere out there. It was built here inside me. One morning at a time. What changed after that was subtle but powerful. My day didn't control me anymore. I controlled my day. I started responding to life instead of rushing through it. My focus improved, my anxiety dropped, and my heart felt lighter, and all of that started from doing nothing. Just silence. That's the thing. Our mornings set the tone for our days, and our days shape our lives. If your morning begins with noise, your life will echo chaos. But if it begins with stillness, your life will reflect peace. And I promise you this, when you learn to start your day with calmness, the world can throw anything at you and you'll still know who you are inside. Because stillness is not weakness, it's strength, the quiet kind. The kind that guides you, grounds you, and reminds you that before the world demands your attention, your soul deserves your presence. The second habit that changed my life was something so simple yet so overlooked. Every morning before I planned my day, before I checked what I had to do, I started writing down what I was thankful for. Just 3 things. That's it. And at first it felt almost childish. I remember thinking of how can writing a few words of gratitude change anything. But what I didn't realize then was that gratitude doesn't change your circumstances. It changes you. Before I began this practice, my mornings were all about chasing. What do I need to do? What's missing? What's wrong? I used to wake up with a weight on my chest, thinking about deadlines, expectations, and problems. My mind was always running ahead into what I didn't have, what I hadn't achieved, what could go wrong. But gratitude slowed everything down. It forced me to stop and see what was already right. That first morning, I sat with my notebook and wrote, I'm grateful for my breath. I'm grateful for my parents. I'm grateful for this new day. It felt so basic, almost silly. But as I wrote, something inside me softened. My attention shifted from lack to abundance, from complaints to appreciation, from stress to peace. And that shift, though invisible, changed the entire direction of my energy. That day, I began to notice the difference between waking up with problems and waking up there with perspective. One drains you, the other strengthens you. Gratitude doesn't erase your struggles, but it reminds you that even in pain, there's something to be thankful for. And that awareness, it heals you in ways nothing else can. Over time, my gratitude list grew deeper. It wasn't just I'm thankful for food anymore. It became I'm thankful that I can taste, that I can walk, that I can read, that I have another chance to try. I realized that we take so much for granted until we lose it. We don't appreciate our breath until it's hard to breathe. We don't value peace until we lose it. Gratitude taught me to celebrate the ordinary because one day the ordinary becomes extraordinary. And here's the beautiful irony. When I started writing my thank you list, my to-do list became easier to handle. My goals didn't feel like pressure anymore, they felt like privilege. Instead of saying, I have to do this, I began saying, I get to do this. The energy behind my actions changed. I worked with joy, not fear. I started the day full, not empty. You see, when you start your morning with gratitude, you stop chasing happiness. You start creating it. Because happiness isn't something you find. It's something you ain't notice. The small moments, the simple blessings, the things you already have but overlook. Gratitude opens your eyes to them. I remember one day I was running late. Everything was going wrong. The traffic, the noise, the pressure. But then from habit, I asked myself, what can I still be grateful for right now? And instantly my focus shifted. I realized I'm alive, I'm learning, I'm growing. And somehow that made all the chaos manageable. Gratitude doesn't make your life perfect. It makes you a present. It brings you back from everything that's missing to everything that's here. It teaches you that peace doesn't come when everything goes right. It comes when you appreciate what's already right. So now every morning before I touch my phone, before I plan my tasks, I write 3 things I'm grateful for. Some days it's big things. Some days it's just the sun, a cup of tea, or the fact that I woke up again. But every single time it humbles me. It reminds me that I already have enough to be happy. And I realize something powerful. Gratitude is not just an emotion, it's a discipline. Because the more you practice it, the more your brain learns to find the good in everything. Problems will still come, but gratitude will teach you how to face them with grace. Your goals matter, your dreams matter. But before you chase them, learn to thank life for what you already have. Because success without gratitude will always feel like failure. But gratitude, even without success, will always feel like peace. The third habit that truly transformed my life was learning before speaking. It sounds simple, but for me it changed everything. My relationships, my thinking, even the way I saw myself for the longest time. I was always eager to respond, to prove, to share my opinion. Someone would talk, and before they even finished their sentence, my mind was already preparing what to say next. I wasn't really listening, I was just waiting for my turn to talk. And because of that, I was hearing people, but I wasn't understanding them. One day, during a conversation with a close friend, I caught myself doing it again. They were talking about something painful, and I interrupted, thinking I was helping, thinking my advice would make it better. But I saw the look in their eyes, disappointment. They didn't need answers, they needed presence. That moment hit me deeply. I realized how often we speak to be heard, not to connect. How often we rush to teach when life is trying to teach us. So I made a promise to myself for 1 week. I would listen more and speak less. I would observe before reacting. I would read, learn, absorb before I expressed. At first it felt uncomfortable. The silence between words used to scare me. I thought silence made me look weak or unsure. But the more I practiced, the more I discovered something powerful. Silence doesn't make you weak, it makes you wise. When I began to truly listen to people, to books, to life itself, I realized how much I'd been missing. Every person I met became a teacher. Every story carried a lesson. Every quiet moment revealed something new about myself. The world started to look different, not because it changed, but because I did. I started to spend time reading instead of reacting. A few pages of a good book in the morning, a podcast during my walks, sometimes even a short reflection on something I had heard earlier. Slowly, my mind began to stretch. I wasn't just thinking from emotion anymore. I was thinking from understanding. Knowledge started to shape me quietly while silence started to heal me deeply. And there's something magical that happens when you stop rushing to speak. You start noticing more. You see the details in conversations. You hear what people don't say. You pick up the emotions behind words, the pauses, the tone. You begin to sense the truth that hides beneath noise. Listening became like meditation for me. It trained my mind to stay calm in chaos and patient in confusion. I also realized that most of my mistakes in life came from speaking too soon or knowing too little. The times I misunderstood someone, the times I gave advice without experience, the times I reacted out of ego, not empathy. But when you listen first, when you seek to understand before trying to be understood, you avoid so many unnecessary conflicts. You communicate with compassion, not competition. And the beauty of learning before speaking is that it humbles you. The more you learn, the more you realize how little you actually know. That humility opens the door to growth. It makes you more open, more curious, more human. Instead of trying to impress others with knowledge, you start to express from depth. Your words become fewer, but they start to matter. I remember one evening sitting quietly after a long day reflecting on this habit. I thought about how our world is full of voices. Everyone speaking, posting, arguing, shouting to be heard, but very few are truly listening. And maybe that's why peace feels so rare. Because peace doesn't come from louder opinions, it comes from deeper understanding. So, I began practicing this everywhere. In conversations, I'd listen fully without planning my response. In moments of anger, I'd pause, breathe, and ask myself, what can I learn here? Even when someone criticized me, instead of defending myself, I tried to find the lesson behind their words. And you know what happened? My relationships became calmer. My communication became clearer. My mind became quieter. Learning before speaking isn't just about gathering knowledge. It's about building awareness. It's about respecting every interaction as an opportunity to grow. Because when you speak without learning, your words come from impulse. But when you learn before speaking, your words come from insight. That 1 week of practicing silence taught me more than years of endless talking ever could. It reminded me that wisdom doesn't shout. It listens, it observes, it waits, and when it finally speaks, it speaks with purpose. So now whenever I'm about to speak, I remind myself, listen first, learn first, then speak. Because your voice will only have power when it comes from understanding, not noise. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. There came a point in my life when I realized that my conversations were shaping my character more than I knew. I used to spend so much time talking about people, who said what, who did what, who changed, who didn't. Sometimes it was harmless, just casual talk. Other times it turned into subtle gossip, judgments disguised as opinions, comparisons hidden behind concern. I didn't notice it then, but those conversations were quietly draining my energy, poisoning my peace, and lowering my focus. And the saddest part, it felt normal. Everyone around me was doing it, so I thought it was fine. But one day I caught myself in a conversation where we spent nearly an hour talking about someone who wasn't even present. When I went home that evening, I felt oddly heavy. My mood was off, my mind was restless. It felt like I had eaten something that didn't agree with me. But it wasn't my stomach that was upset. It was my soul. That night I asked myself a simple but hard question. Why am I feeding myself with words that don't grow me? The next morning I made a quiet decision for 1 week. I would stop talking about people and start talking about ideas, growth, and purpose. I didn't announce it to anyone, I just silently shifted. And that single shift changed more in me than I could have imagined. At first, it wasn't easy. Conversations can be addictive. Gossip gives you a temporary feeling of connection, like you're part of something. It feeds your ego, it makes you feel relevant. But what I realized was every time I discussed someone else's life, I was avoiding responsibility for my own. Every time I criticized, I was deflecting from something I needed to fix in me. Gossip was noise that distracted me from growth, so I began replacing it. When someone brought up a person, I gently steered the topic toward ideas. If someone complained, I asked, "What can we learn from this?" I stopped giving opinions about people I barely knew. And when someone spoke negatively, I practiced silence. It wasn't easy. Silence in a world addicted to judgment feels uncomfortable. But slowly something within me started to change. My energy shifted. My conversations became lighter yet more meaningful. I realized that when you stop discussing people, you start discovering yourself. You free up mental space to think about your goals, your dreams, your growth. You stop being a mirror for others' flaws and start being a window for your own improvement. The more I practiced this, the more peace I felt. My mind wasn't buzzing with who said what anymore. I began noticing how gossip not only wastes time, it steals clarity. It fills your heart with unnecessary emotion. It breeds comparison, envy, and insecurity. But when you focus on ideas and solutions instead of people and problems, life starts to feel lighter. You stop reacting and start creating, and something unexpected happened. The moment I stopped gossiping, certain people around me started to drift away. At first, I felt lonely, but then I realized they weren't bad people. They just weren't aligned with where I was growing. You can't surround yourself with conversations that pull others down and expect to rise. If you want to elevate your life, you have to elevate your conversations first. Soon, I started attracting different kinds of people. The ones who talked about dreams, not drama. People who discussed discipline, not others' downfalls. Friends who made me think deeper, not talk louder. And I began to see the pattern. The quality of your conversations determines the quality of your mind. I remember sitting with a mentor one day sharing how this habit changed me. And he said something I'll never forget. The most intelligent people talk about ideas. The most peaceful people talk about gratitude. The most unhappy people talk about others. That line struck me deeply because I realized I had spent years in the wrong category. Not because I was bad, but because I was unaware. It's so easy to fall into the trap of gossip. It feels harmless, even bonding at times. But what we don't realize is that every negative word we speak about someone else leaves a stain on our own peace. Words carry energy. When we speak with bitterness, that energy doesn't stop with the person we talk about. It stays with us. It echoes in our own hearts. Now, whenever I feel tempted to talk about someone, I pause and ask myself, is this useful? Is it kind? Is it helping anyone grow? If the answer is no, I let silence do the talking because silence can never be misguided. Silence never hurts anyone. And with time, I noticed another beautiful shift. My thoughts became cleaner. My inner dialogue became kinder. I wasn't comparing myself as much. I wasn't seeking validation through stories about others. My focus came back to where it always should have been, on building myself. The truth is, gossip is a form of mental junk food. It satisfies a craving, but it leaves you weaker. Growth, learning, and self-reflection, they're the real nourishment. And once you start feeding your mind with that, you lose the appetite for gossip completely. So now I live by a simple principle. If it doesn't help me grow, I don't give it my energy, because energy is sacred. Words are sacred. Conversations are sacred. And the people who use them wisely build not only their own peace, but also a better world around them. That week of choosing growth over gossip taught me that peace is not found in avoiding people. It's found in mastering your focus. When your words start building rather than breaking, your life begins to rise quietly, beautifully, and powerfully. There's something powerful about ending your day with honesty. Not the kind of honesty you give to others, but the kind you give to yourself. For a long time, I used to collapse into bed at night, scrolling through my phone, letting my mind wander aimlessly through noise. I never paused to look back at the day I had just lived, and without realizing it, I was carrying unfinished emotions, unprocessed mistakes, and unlearned lessons into the next day. My days began to blur together. One endless loop of activity without reflection. I was moving fast, but not necessarily forward. Then one evening, I decided to try something new. I sat quietly. No phone, no distractions, just me and my thoughts. I asked myself two simple questions. What did I do well today? And what can I do better tomorrow? That was it, just those two questions. But they opened a door inside me that I didn't even know existed. At first it felt strange. My mind resisted. It said, you don't have time for this, or what's the point of thinking about the past? But the more I reflected, the more I realized that reflection isn't about reliving your date, it's about redeeming it. It's about turning every moment, every mistake, every success into wisdom. It's not judgment, it's learning. When I ask myself, what did I do well today? I noticed how easily I dismissed my small wins, the smile I gave a stranger, the patience I showed when I could have reacted, the discipline to stay consistent even when it was hard. I used to overlook these moments because they didn't seem grand enough. But those tiny victories, when acknowledged, began to build my confidence quietly. Gratitude grew naturally out of awareness. I started to appreciate my effort instead of chasing perfection. And when I asked, what can I do better tomorrow? I didn't answer with guilt. I answered with curiosity. I didn't say I failed again. I said, how can I grow from this? That small shift changed the entire tone of my nights. Reflection stopped being a punishment and became a preparation. I wasn't ending my day with stress anymore. I was ending it with intention. With time, this habit became my nightly ritual. A sacred few minutes before sleep where I checked in with myself. No pretending, no running away, just truth. Some nights I'd find pride in how I handled challenges. Other nights I'd find lessons in where I fell short. But every night I walked away with clarity. I began to understand my patterns, what triggered me, what motivated me, what drained me. I could see my growth happening slowly but surely. And something beautiful started to happen after a few weeks. I began waking up lighter. My mornings felt calmer because my nights were cleaner. I wasn't carrying yesterday's heaviness into today's purpose. Reflection had quietly turned into release. It was as if every night I was forgiving myself a little, learning from life and resetting my soul. The more I practiced this, the more I realized that reflection is not just about the past. It's an investment in your future. When you reflect, you're not stuck in what happened. You're understanding how to shape what comes next. You become more aware of who you're becoming. You start making conscious choices instead of running on autopilot. There were nights when reflection made me emotional. When I realized how often I had spoken harshly, or how many moments I had wasted scrolling, or how many chances I had missed to say thank you. But instead of drowning in regret, I learned to convert it into resolve. I would whisper to myself, okay, tomorrow I'll do better. And that promise, though small, gave me strength because reflection doesn't demand perfection. It just asks for honesty. The world constantly teaches us to plan our future, but very few teach us to understand our past. Yet both are equally important. Without reflection, you repeat. With reflection, you evolve. I began to see that the most peaceful people aren't those who never make mistakes. They're the ones who learn from them daily. Sometimes I'd even write down my reflections. A simple journal, nothing fancy, just a few lines of what I learned that day. Over time, those pages became a map of my growth. When I looked back weeks later, I could see how far I'd come. Not because everything changed overnight, but because I showed up for myself every night. And slowly my night stopped being an escape. They became a meeting with me, a quiet conversation where I asked my soul, "Are you proud of how you live today?" Some nights the answer was yes. Other nights it was not yet. But both were beautiful because honesty, even when it hurts, brings healing. There's something peaceful about sleeping with clarity. When your mind isn't busy regretting or worrying, when your heart isn't heavy with unspoken thoughts, just peace earned through reflection. It's like putting your day to rest before you put yourself to rest. That simple habit, 10 minutes of reflection, taught me that growth doesn't happen in the doing, it happens in the air's understanding. Every day gives you lessons, but it's reflection that turns them into wisdom. And once you start ending your day this way, you'll never again fall asleep feeling lost. Because even if the day wasn't perfect, it was meaningful. And maybe that's the real definition of a good life. Not one without mistakes, but one where every mistake becomes a lesson, every success becomes gratitude, and every night ends with peace. I didn't realize how much of my mental energy was being consumed by screens until I stepped away from them. For the longest time, my day began and ended with a device in my hand. My phone was the first thing I touched in the morning and the last thing I saw at night. It felt normal, scrolling through updates, checking messages, replying to notifications. But deep down, I could feel something changing. My attention was shrinking. My peace was fading. My thoughts were louder, but my mind was quieter. It was as if my brain was constantly running on borrowed energy, alert, distracted, restless. One evening, after hours of scrolling without purpose, I caught myself staring at the screen completely numb. I had no idea what I was even looking at. I wasn't learning, I wasn't connecting. I was just consuming, and it hit me. I was feeding my brain a constant diet of noise. I was filling every silent gap in my day with someone else's life, someone else's voice, someone else's opinions. I had forgotten what it felt like to be as alone with my own mind, so I decided to take a break. A digital fast, not a complete disconnection from the world, but a conscious decision to spend less time on screens and more time in reality. The first day was uncomfortable. My fingers kept reaching for my phone automatically like a reflex. I realized it wasn't just a habit, it was an addiction. Every few minutes my brain would whisper, "Check it. Maybe you missed something." But what I had really missed was at myself. During that week, I started observing my thoughts again. The silence that once scared me started to feel healing. I noticed how often I used my phone to avoid emotions, to escape boredom, sadness, or uncertainty. Whenever I didn't want to deal with something, I'd distract myself with endless scrolling. But when the screen time stopped, those emotions surfaced. And that's when I learned something profound. Distraction doesn't delete emotions, it only delays them. The moment you unplug, your inner world becomes louder. But that's exactly where the truth lies. In those quiet hours, I began to reconnect with the parts of me I had been ignoring. I read books, not short posts, but actual pages that required attention. I journaled. I took walks without music, just listening to the sound of my footsteps. I looked at the sky, the trees, the people around me, things that used to pass me by unnoticed. It was strange at first, almost awkward, but then it became beautiful. The world that once looked ordinary started to feel alive again. I began to notice how deeply technology had woven itself into my identity. I had started measuring my worth through notifications, my happiness through likes, my success through comparisons. But the truth is, real life isn't happening inside your screen. It's happening right now, around you and within you. The digital world moves fast, but your soul moves slow. When you try to live at the speed of a feed, you lose touch with the rhythm of your own life. As the days went on, my mind began to clear. I could think longer, focus deeper, and feel calmer. Even small things like eating a meal without checking my phone felt refreshing. I could taste the food, not just consume it. Conversations felt richer. Eye contact became real again. It's amazing how much beauty returns when you give it your full attention. And it's not that technology is bad. It's a tool, a powerful one. But the danger begins when the tool starts using you. I realized that I wasn't choosing what to see. Algorithms were choosing for me. My thoughts, my emotions, even my mood were being subtly shaped by what I consumed. I was living reactively, not intentionally. That realization changed everything. So I created boundaries. No phone for the first hour after waking up, and none for the last hour before sleep. I turned off non-essential notifications. I replaced screen time with soul time, reading, reflecting, connecting with real people. And slowly I felt my peace return. My creativity blossomed again. I started to think clearly because I was finally giving my brain space to breathe. There's something sacred about boredom, something we've forgotten. When you're not constantly stimulated, your mind begins to wander, to imagine, to create. Some of my best ideas came in those moments of quiet disconnection. I realized that inspiration doesn't come from more information, it comes from stillness. When the noise fades, your inner voice becomes audible. But perhaps the biggest change came from awareness. Every time I picked up my phone now, I asked myself why. Was I reaching for it out of purpose or out of habit? Most times it was the latter. That awareness became my control. I was no longer living on autopilot. I was choosing consciously. And here's the irony. When I started spending less time online, my connections in real life deepened. I listened better. I laughed more. I was present. People noticed the difference too. They said, "You seem calmer," or "You look happier." It wasn't because I did something extraordinary. I just stopped scattering my attention in 1,000 directions. I brought it back home to the moment I was living. Now when I do use technology, I use it intentionally. I choose content that nourishes my mind, not numbs it. I connect, not compare. I learn, not escape. Because peace doesn't come from isolation. It comes from balance. It's not about rejecting the digital world. It's about not letting it replace the real one. That 1 week of digital fasting taught me that silence is not empty. It's full of answers. That stillness is not laziness, it's clarity. And that when you disconnect from the noise, you reconnect with your nature. Today I still take those small fasts. Sometimes a few hours, sometimes a day. And every single time I feel renewed, the world slows down. My thoughts align and my heart feels at ease. Because the truth is, our minds were never designed to absorb this much noise. They were designed to think, to feel, to create, to connect. And when we honor that design, life doesn't just get quieter, it gets clearer. The digital world will always be there. But your peace, that's something only you can protect. And sometimes the best way to protect it is to simply put the phone down. Lift your eyes and remember that the real world, the one with sunsets, laughter, and real conversations, is waiting for you to return.